For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Hernandez, and I'm a professor in the College of Business and Leadership at Eastern. And I am the founder of this group. And we founded this group as a way to support our students and also to reach out to those of you who are in the dissertation writing phase. I'll stop to let my very resourceful research assistant and administrator of the group to introduce herself. Faith Ann.
Hi, everybody. I know most of you. Faith, part of cohort 16. I'm glad you guys could join us. And if you have any ideas for any future talks, please let us know. We have a schedule set up till May, but we are looking for the future.
Thank you. And so without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Hill. And then before we begin, I'm going to pray that God will bless this session and that you will really be blessed. So I'm so pleased that Dr. Hill agreed to do this session with us. I have to say, we cannot pay him for the quality of his information, but he's a friend and he's a colleague and he's a brother. And so I'm so glad that he said it. And Dr. Hill has a PhD in education with an emphasis in e-learning. And he got that from the University of Nottingham. And he has an MA from Virginia Tech in instructional technology. Currently, he's the director of the Center of Excellence for Teaching and Learning at the University of the West Indies in Trinidad, where we are both, we were both lucky to be there in July, and now he's here. So without further ado, Dr. Hill will present on using ChatGPT AI for dissertation writing in ethical and practical ways. And before we do that, let's have a quick word of prayer. Heavenly Father, I thank you for everyone who's present. I pray that this information will really be useful. God, you have called them to this time to do this dissertation. And so we pray that the information that is shared that will help them to advance towards their purpose, we pray in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. So thank you for having me, Dr. Hernandez and Faith Ann. I know we've been deliberating in the discussion. I don't know. I need to share my screen. Let me just share my screen. Share screen. You let me know if you are able to see my screen. Are you able to see my screen? Yes, no? Yes, no, in the chat, if you can indicate, that would be good. I need to see. Yes, excellent. I'm seeing the chat and I can see. So I see many of you are coming from different sections. And so thank you for the opportunity again on behalf of, I will turn off my video, my Zoom video, but allow the screen to show if that's okay for you. So it's important for us to see here that this discussion, I'll give a little forewarning or disclaimer. It's not a tutorial or a workshop on AI or ChatGPT, but we really want as practitioners to really wrap our head around AI dissertation writing and the practical and ethical usage, some of the challenges, the opportunities that we have. I want to thank Kathy Ann and Faith Ann for really forward thinking, because this has been an issue for many universities, and in particular persons who are writing are finding themselves very much glued towards using ChatGPT. In a very short way, our goal, the goal for this session here will be a focus on building capacity, raise awareness around the tool, deepen your personal responsibility, to use effectively ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, and address real world application when it comes to writing. I must say here that, in today's session, it really provides an opportunity for us to also group think, because many of you come with many experiences. Some of you are already using AI in your practice, and so we will begin to explore and share some of those. And so I invite you your comments, and please As we go along, you feel free to pop in the comments in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat, so you can certainly do that. And also Faithan is also monitoring the chat. And so if at the end of this session we achieve these 3 things, then we will have done a very good, an okay job. Okay, so I'd like to really begin to provide a scope, or to really cap this at a very careful point in terms of looking at writing and the whole idea of writing. And I really love what Kama and Thompson in the book Helping Doctoral Students Write. It's a very good book. If I have my copy, that is my copy. I'm not sharing it. Persons have actually come, and definitely it's a good book. It's a good read. And in terms of the whole idea of writing as a social practice, it really looks at the whole idea of text and wanting to see writing as a way of generating ideas. And you can see a fair clause framework which Kama and Thompson has actually put forward as a very meaningful way in really providing a context for us in using AI. But in a very different way, I thought that sharing the idea of theories of writing. All right, let me just turn this off. Theories of writing. And it becomes clear to us as we begin to see how we write and what actually drives the whole writing process. And so I'd like to see, where do you think you position yourself in terms of these theories? Which of these you think that you see yourself? I mean, do you see writing more as a cognitive process? Do you see writing more as a sociocultural? There's a sociocultural theory of writing, social cognitive, and the self-efficacy part, or do you promote more or use or draw on the ecological aspect? Social cognitive, very good. I'm seeing 2, so thank you, Mary. Thank you, Kathy Ann. I'm seeing, I think it depends on the context. So very good, very good. Ashley, sorry. Ecological, maybe. So Jim, I don't know if you want to take the mic and explain why you're thinking maybe. Just for a short notice. Anybody could take the mic. But Jim.
Gosh, I didn't want to write that, so I'd have to talk. I think a large portion of what I do in dealing with people and explaining certain things that happen on my campus, or the way in which groups or kind of complex institutions function, I find that my writing is used a lot to kind of explain or kind of make clear certain things that have happened, or certain things that are going to happen. And so I draw on research and different things that are happening in the world to kind of move people, or kind of get people to start thinking about what's happening around them. And I saw that more as maybe ecological.
Yeah. So I mean, it's both the social and the cognitive there. And I think that is a very meaningful, and I think it was Ashley who mentioned that it depends. It depends. And so this particular framework, thank you so much. Who was it? Jim, thank you so much. So it's important for us to see there that we write in all of these contexts, and I think many of us who writing from the standpoint of your dissertation writing, you might find yourself struggling these 4 theories or frameworks of writing. In fact, the very idea that you have this Facebook group means that it's providing some sort of support in terms of your writing, and from that standpoint. So we begin to think that writing is not divorced from the things that we do. And I also like just expanding the sociocultural aspect a little bit more, because Vygotsky, who promotes the idea of sociocultural theory, but his counterpart, his counterpart Leontev and others who promoted the whole idea of activity-based systems where we write. And I really love how Q and Gu in 2020 put it forward in terms of the mediating artifact, that writing can be seen, you can be seen as different ways in using things. And AI, as you can see, Gu, and you can read the entire article, Gu and Ku mentioned the whole idea of AI being used as a tool to advance the object, which is writing. And so it certainly is nothing strange, and that we can think of the interaction that we have. Vygotsky thought in his original conceptualization of his theory of physical but also psychological tools. And so it's that sort of discourse. And I like how Mark Schappels, I think he published this yesterday in terms of his generative AI as a participant in conversations for learning. And I think it's from that standpoint we like to frame this little activity that we're doing here, this little discussion that we're doing, because certainly it invites us to look at AI as a tool. If we're going back to activity theory from Leontief standpoint, we can see how AI can be used as part of your wider activity system. It's certainly not the only tool that you will be drawing on. And I'd like to begin to think that many of us are using AI already. In the chat, if you can let me know, have you already started using AI I'm just indicate in the chat how are you using AI? No, yes, no, yes, no. Let's put yes, no. Yes, yes. Okay, great. So we are seeing some of you, and many of you are using it. So there is certainly that option that we are seeing of that interaction and that conversation that takes place. And it becomes important for us to see that we have those conversations. I again extend the idea that many of us, I think Berger's toolkit, from his toolkit, one issue from his toolkit or one rationale behind is to really have that conversation. We're not crazy. We're not crazy, but I think the framework that he mentioned here in terms of, and this is taken from Pat Thompson's blog. If you don't have this blog, I will put it in the chat and you can follow along. This is a very useful tool, and mentioned conversation as one of those in Berger's toolkit. And for him, writing conversation with the reader was an imagined listener who was present for previous writings and will be in the present or future. So if we're thinking we are writing because we want to maintain a conversation, and in the future, and we do know AI is using large language models, and so it means that is it that some of that conversation can be my own contribution to that large language model. And so it's important for us to see that conversations can happen with ourselves, the present and the future. And you can certainly see how you can see that from a social discourse standpoint. It's important for us to see that from that standpoint. Also from a metaphor, we can also see it in ways of we being able to interact with technology and tools. We've seen the whole advancement of the various levels of industrial revolution, and 2020, if you can see, the whole idea of industrial 5.0, the interruption or the synergy between humans and artificial intelligence is seen as an important nexus in our advancement. And I think this is where we are in terms of really questioning, in terms of not being able to issues of trust, issues of trying to understand, but it is certainly important for us to see as writers where we situate ourselves in terms of using AI as a tool. I think the opportunity is here for us to really embrace, but doing so very carefully and creatively. All right. I am encouraged to remind us, very short activity. How did your any particular reaction when you first get exposed to the calculator in your classroom? Were there some hesitance? Or even the smartphone, or even World Wide Web, or even the pandemic? These are disruptors. And I would like to add AI to this list. All right, certainly we see that they are major disruptors. And it is important for us to see how we ourselves respond to this disruption. So very quickly, we don't have a lot of time, but I would like to see how you would have responded, or how did you respond, or remember your colleagues, how did they respond to that? Anyone can, in the chat or in the mic. I'll ask for 2 persons for the mic, but you can continue in the chat. That would be great. Any 2 persons can indicate, and then you can go ahead. Anyone? Okay, so from Mary saying the World Wide Web to move from card catalogs. I'd be happy to know in terms of how persons responded. I did know, for example, the persons were kind of not trusting the web, and the whole idea of students cheating and copying and pasting and all these different things. And we got the rise of plagiarism checkers. It was struggle to cite on the web in the early 90s. Okay, so Robin is acknowledging that, and so forth. Smartphones, I think there was the whole idea of banning smartphones in the classrooms on a whole. I still think even we in the Caribbean here, that's you know, a big thing. I mean, and yes, persons are using things like Google. They're not using libraries anymore. Google is now the search engine for everything, even for medical advice. And so we see the sort of disruption in our whole education movement, how we are seeing that. And so I think we ought to really take a step back and really think about those disruptors, and AI is certainly one of those disruptors. If we were to look at AI, and just to get a quick historical overview of it, we'll see the whole idea of AI is nothing new. And are you able to identify anything here? Any major news items from here? Anyone that sticks out for you? But knowing that the idea and the thinking behind AI actually started in 1955, the actual nomenclature of it. So Watson, so Faithan, you met Watson. Tell us about that. Tell us a little bit about that. Hold the mic.
So Watson is in Yorktown Heights, New York, and it's actually a town away from me. And when I was a newspaper editor, we were the media was all brought in when Watson was on Jeopardy, and so we got to meet Watson, and it was really, like it was really interesting.
Yes. I mean, the first time thank you, Faith, and that is such. The first time I particularly used Alexa, I was astounded to and many of us use Siri on our smart devices. So it's amazing to see that we've been using artificial intelligence to really advance and do certain things in our lives. So I think the first the Jetson, yes, I certainly think so, Robin. I certainly think so as well. The Jetsons, who doesn't like a kind of futuristic twist to what the world should be like? And I'll tell you this. We now have autonomous, cars that drive themselves. We now have cars that use AI to detect speed and all these different things. And so it's important for us to see that AI is nothing new. I think what has been the challenge, what has been the perhaps really turn of things was in 2022 when we got exposed to Chat GPT. All right, and so let's begin to look at the whole idea of artificial intelligence. I do know that for some, we categorize artificial intelligence as a sector in computing, but for us, it's really more the idea of machine imitating intelligent human behavior. all right, responses. And so the ability for machines to perform tasks that we normally do, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and language translation. So these are things attributed to human beings, and machines can now do that. And so from a very, trying to make it as plain as I can, artificial intelligence is that's what it is. I think, again, just going back to the whole idea of generative AI, we became engrossed with that idea, what generative AI, and the idea of artificial intelligence being able to generate, create, you have new outputs based on data that they have. They've been trained. And so there's been concepts like machine learning and large language models. And so it is important to see that, unlike traditional AI systems, that they are designed to recognize patterns, make connections, make predictions, and generate new content in the form of images, text, and more. And I will tell you this. This has been a creative bubble or that's bursting in many ways, because we see a lot of persons creating new forms of generative AI. So we see ChatGPT as being the forerunner, as being one of those early. We now have Claude, we have Bing, we have Google Board. And so we have those that really, those chatbots, but we have a number of spin-offs. We have a number of spin-offs that's doing a lot. If anyone here uses Grammarly? Anyone here uses Grammarly? Yes, no, yes, no. Well, if you use Grammarly, then Grammarly obviously got a real push, a really great push through, and certainly it's much more now enhanced. We can certainly see that because of from that standpoint. I did a quick query, and I asked ChatGPT, and this is AI informed, to really tell me, which of the generative, I asked it to include those for those 5, and it gave me a prediction as to in terms of how I should be seeing this. You can see here the chatbot for creativity. We see Bard, very low creativity, high accuracy, its speed is medium. ChatGPT was referred to as high in creativity, low in accuracy, and speed was very low. And Bing Chat, medium. I mean, I've actually switched more to using Bing Chat, because Bing Chat actually uses, when you go to the creative mode, it actually uses ChatGPT for technology in the background. So the ChatGPT that's free to most of us who can afford it is actually, accuracy is very low, but it's still very useful and still very powerful, even though it's at scale. So, and we've seen very carefully in different industries, and it used in different industries, from healthcare to transportation to entertainment. We're now seeing the entertainers using it to really make music in very meaningful ways, and so forth. And in the education context, we tutoring assistant, teaching assistant. We see a lot of universities, their support in terms of providing support to students in the chatbots and so forth, curriculum design. But I think for us as researchers, as writers, as we are always keen to the challenges. And I think number one in the challenge is that whole idea of ethics. Ethics. I mean, we have the whole idea. The unemployment thing there is, it's more affecting more white-collar jobs than blue-collar jobs. But we see ethics as, and I think this will still remain a challenge, even into the near future, because it requires those sort of sensitive response and creative response to what is right and what is wrong. It really forces us to rethink, because I can tell you here, if you I'll put this article in the chat here, that can linguists distinguish between ChatGPT? And it was amazing how they were able to see here that they will consider whether or not it will be to distinguish is becoming much difficult. We can find little cues, and I will tell you this: BBC, for example, gave us an idea through a post here. You can see an example of how ChatGPT, we can actually see how it repeats itself. No evidence given, very simple. So sometimes the writing, it is not really, it's still lacking that human touch, that connective part of our language and our being and understanding. But it is still is becoming much more able to do that. Again, let's go back to the ethics, because I think the ethics is very important. Above all, as persons, even within communities of faith, that ethics drives us. These are things that drives our values, and I think the guidelines provided for by UNESCO here, it says researchers, teachers, learners should be aware that generative AI systems operate as black boxes, and that it is consequently difficult to, and if not impossible, to know why particular content has been created. A lack of explanation of how these outputs are generated in terms of how the algorithm is actually working and so forth. Generated tends to lock users in a logic defined by parameters defined by the AI systems themselves, the generative AI systems. So these parameters may reflect cultural, commercial values and norms, and implicitly bias the content produced. So I think one of the key things as writers, if we are using AI, we ought to be really clear about that. And while we recognized from using it in the activity system as a tool, we do recognize, hey, we are the ones who are in control. We are the ones who are in control. And I mean, remember, the artificial intelligence, large language modules, which is really crawling the internet. And by the way, ChatGPT 4 actually right now, I think as of, I can't remember how recent, but they are now live on the internet, which means that they can actually crawl the live internet. ChatGPT 3, I think, is limited to 2021, is it? I think, but it gives you dated information. All right, but the thing is, we are still recognizing that the biasness, the challenges that we have of information on the internet is actually repeated or given to us, because we are more or less querying in a very meaningful way, and so ChatGPT will make those connections and give you something that is actually there. But it is, as Dr. Hernandez is saying, that's very interested, the cultural bias. It is a very important for us to see that. I mean, if you do a search for university presidents, I'm sure 8 out of 10 times you'll maybe find male, or and so that those gender biases will come through the queries as we see them. I also want to recommend, if you don't have it as yet, to really get a copy of the UNESCO. If you're going to be researching, you're going to be doing that, research ethics on a whole of artificial intelligence. That's a useful guide. I think it's useful because it really gives us a clear idea. I also think that I know you already know this. You already know this. I know you already know this, that your university, Eastern University, those of you who are within Eastern University, there is presently a guideline that requires you presenting another person's word. And if we can accept that AI is other, if we present it as other, if you want to call it work or opinions as one's own. This includes the presentation of words, pictures, ideas, or artwork that are not your own, and if they were your own in spoken, written, or visual form, and so it's clear that we have those. From that standpoint, we have that clear declaration of what we should do. And I'm focusing a lot on the ethical standpoint because it's important. It's very important. And I think number one is, it is your responsibility as a user. It is your responsibility as a user to understand the institutional context and guidelines, but also your own personal values. We are driven by our values, as we say, but sometimes we lose track and we get caught up with all the tools and gimmicks, and we forget that we ought to acknowledge, we ought to, so Isaac Newton said, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And so it's still a questionable area as to whether or not we recognize ChatGPT as a giant, because it's actually crawling information that belongs to somebody. And sometimes we really don't know whose information is that. So Jim, you're saying, would this be something we should then mention in our dissertation, the limitation? For example, ChatGPT was utilized to conduct searches for relevant topics with research. All sources generated from ChatGPT were checked thoroughly and cited. I think this is excellent, Jim. This is excellent. And I think when I first proffered on Twitter whether or not we're seeing a new form of attribution in terms of content, because persons are generating content. We have the Creative Commons, and Creative Commons in a very meaningful way says that, but then persons who create content using ChatGPT, I mean, for research purposes, there is right now accepted, unless some universities don't accept the citation because they say, no, it's not, it's a new form, but you are acknowledging, you are being transparent about it. So I think clearly getting those discussions around your university policy, and I think that would, you're disclaiming, you're being transparent, Jim. So that certainly is something that you can have, but avoid plagiarism, and so forth. But again, I like the idea of using tools to be creative. It makes your life much easier. Think about it. I use Zotero. I mean, I know the syntax rules, and I know, hey, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to format your paper, and in particular format for research journal, and sometimes they do change. And so it becomes important. Tools like Zotero, Mendeley, I don't know which one you guys use. Which one do you use? Put it in the chat. It makes your life easier. Many of us who use spell check, certainly, it is important for us to see that. There is the discussion also that definitions. So definitions of plagiarism. Where do you see yourself? Is it time to rethink plagiarism? Let's talk a little bit about this let's talk a little bit about it. All right, and this is really taken from Matt Miller's ditchthattextbook.com. You can certainly follow his work. It really caused me to think about student created to the bottom, but created to the top. Where and when would we say plagiarism? When is cheating? Anybody? Quickly, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
I will jump in just to
Yes.
say that it continues to be a shifting area. I mean, I came up with a statement and I said, it's going to continue to evolve. We use APA in our program, and the last time I checked online, they were grappling with how to come to terms with what is plagiarism and what is not. But to me, I'm still more down to the blue end in terms of considering it, as ethical, but I'm not staying there. I think it's going to continue to move.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just like to add, it's interesting because I just had this conversation with our chief legal officer at my institution that I work at, and right now AI cannot copyright its own creation. That the court of the United States said, since it doesn't have consciousness and it's a collection of collective data generated from multiple sources, that it actually can't copyright anything that it has. And so therefore it's really hard to say that you're stealing something that isn't generated by another human being. And so it's just an interesting, it's not an easy black and white system because there's not someone that wrote it. It's just a collection of words spewed out by an algorithm. So there's no copyright infringement at all.
Yeah. So I'm persons, Jim, thank you so much for that. And persons have been trying to align that to the whole idea of open educational resources. Should it be in the public domain if that's the case? Because it's somebody's data in the first place. So thank you for that contribution. Sorry, go ahead. I think someone else was going to speak.
Oh, hi, Dr. Hill. This is Mary.
Hi, Mary.
This is a really interesting talk because I was just on a panel at the International Leadership Association that discussed AI technology, leadership, and ethics in higher education. And I think where we all came down, those of us who teach, almost all of us were teachers. So we were down at the blue end also, maybe that student consulted internet AI. And it really does vary, like with what Jim was saying, it varies depending on your institution. And one of the things that we discussed is that if you work in higher education, they're trying to figure out where to put it. Right now, if there is a statement, there are statements on the syllabi. There, is a match on, I think it's on Turnitin, that gives you the likelihood that it was mostly generated by AI. But then, other faculty are really creative about the use of AI and actually work with their students to help them be better consumers of what is coming out of the engine. And so that's also interesting. It's an interesting technique. So I think that it's emerging right now. And policies people are just having those conversations about how to deal with it. Where does the policy reside? Does it reside with academic integrity? Does it reside with student conduct? They're really even not sure where to put it. So that was what the feedback that we had gotten as panelists in that situation.
Wow, Mary, thank you for that. I mean, we can see that it's truly, both you and Jim confirm that it's a black box. It's certainly a black box. And if I can extend the thought that you started in terms of the how some persons are using it, and we do see the mixed use policy being promoted. We do see the encouraging use, and for those, the first thing for many is just say restricted. I don't know where we are. Where would you see yourself in terms of what you're most comfortable with if you were tasked with to use AI in a very meaningful way? I'm seeing here, Kyle, you're saying, I think it's okay if AI generates drafts. If I have the ideas, it does. Does it matter if I have AI or my administrative assistant type them up? Great. So Kyle, you're saying something in critical reflection there. That's interesting. Some persons would take you up on this. But certainly it's important for us to acknowledge that, yes, and that's the thinking of some. And you're really driving me to go to the next question. How many of you can see AI as your assistant? So thank you, Kyle, for really triggering this slide. I don't know if you all can see it, but seeing it as from that same one. Yes, no, yes, no. Will you see AI as your assistant? I'm not setting you up. I'm not setting you up. It's either yes or no. Do you see it as your assistant? Yes, like bouncing ideas off a colleague. Excellent. So Nancy, thank you for that. It's a better research assistant than my dogs. It can be. Oh, okay. Great. Any of you want to hold your mic? I'll give one person a chance to speak during this segment. AI as your assistant. Anybody, quick. We know the time is going, but I really want to give you the opportunity to really engage with the sound a little bit. So Mary, you have your dogs. That's great. Okay, let me move on to the next slide quickly. In the chat then, can you tell me in terms, I would be most comfortable with AI as what? My teaching tutoring, helping me, writing coach, or writing assistant, grammar checker, co-writer. Let's think of the top two. I mean, let's think of the top two or top one that you definitely. I see some of it came out already, but if you can share that, that would be great in the chat. Writing assistant, excellent. Very good. Yeah, great. Grammar coach, idea checker, great. Idea checker, I love that one. I really love that one. Grammar checker, citation check, great, excellent. And so we do see the roles, and I really love what Professor Mark Sharples and really put forward the whole idea of rules. You can follow him on Twitter, and you could see that you can assign in. I think the article that I posted, actually, he actually reposted the various rules from GI in his opinion paper. I mean, it's an opinion paper, and he declared that clearly as an opinion paper. But the role of taking Socratic opponent, collaborative coach, guide on the side, a personal tutor, possibility engine, give you alternatives, seeing how things can generate ideas. So obviously we're seeing some of the things that we are seeing there actually represented by what was identified by Professor Mark Sharples. And he did his PhD, by the way, in AI years ago. He's now Professor Emeritus in Open University. So it tells you that certainly these ideas have been formulating for some time, from some time. I don't know if you guys can see that. I think my slides are moving a little bit to the left. Let me just make sure you're seeing all of that. Let me know. All right. Okay, so we're seeing here study buddy, dynamic assessor, maybe a critical friend. And so it is important for us to see that. The co-designer, wow, we see that. And so it's important for us to see a number of emerging tools that came out as a result. We have so many of them. I stumbled upon this recent one, explainer, explainpaper.com. Actually uses, and so because of the large language models, the AI, they're generating a lot of upstarts and doing different things, but we certainly see many of them to actually help us. But here's what: if you know how to do a very good prompt, you may not need to subscribe to some of these tools, because you can do it yourself. And what the research and what persons have recommended is you need to have an idea of a context or a frame for what a good prompt looks like. And I know that many of you have been testing it, so you know what it looks like, but I think the key thing is context. And one of the things you want to do, I mean, it's not mentioned here in full, is it's giving it a role, giving ChatGPT a role to perform. So is it your assistant? Is it your, plagiarism checker? You give it a role, and you give it as much context as you can. Sorry about that. All right. And so this is a very good framework that you can use and you can adopt. By the way, I've added it. I will give you the link of a document that you can actually access later, but I'll put it in the chat now, and you can actually access this in full. All right, so certainly we do see that, and I also know that there are some persons who ascribe to the whole idea of tones, and that we can use. I want to switch very quickly to really allow us to work in groups. You can access the document. If you can access the document, please access it now. I have an example here, and this was adopted from Warlock and Warlock from Penn State University, and this more or less fits the profile in which they set. And so you see an example here. It's difficult for you to see, but there's one in the document, in that shared document. If you can see that shared document, you will see the example that's provided there on page 3. All right, so that document there, that prompt that you're seeing, you can see the context. If you go back to the prompt, you can see the context, you can see the task. I mean, not always clear the task from the instructions, but we can see certainly how Warlock was able to really give that clear and give very, very contextual. And this is a tutor. No, this is something that you would pay from. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. And so it's something that you would pay for in a tutor. I mean, this is something you can query the AI to do. How many of you are in the document? Let's go in that document. If you can go in the document, you will see the example on page 3. I am preparing us for a little task, a very little task, because it will take us a little while and to get there. We're not going to be using ChatGPT or Bard, but what we really want to do is to really, I'm convinced that the best learning takes place when you take charge. And so Samuel Papier, if you follow his work, I really love his work, The Children's Machine. If you have, that really woke me up a little bit when I first read it. It's important for us to see here that I want you to work in groups. All right. So I'll give you a little while to digest the instructions, and then we're going to open up the groups. Can we have groups, Faith? And I think, can we have groups quickly? I'm not too sure. Breakout rooms. We can create about maybe 4 groups, and then we will come back. I'm thinking that the time is very tight, but you've been given some contexts, but feel free to modify things in the context in that Google document. Any questions? We want to get some group. We want to get you in some group think and get going from that standpoint. So in the document on page 5, you have the group activity. And so you have 4 different scenarios. You have AI-powered literature review, and it's asking you the question really to reflect, how can AI streamline the literature review process and improve the quality of your research? All right. And so it's asking you, you fill in the blanks and you decide in your group scenario. You are a year PhD student, your dissertation topic on sustainable urban development. You can feel free to change it if you're not comfortable with that in the group. Design an AI-powered search and summarization tool that helps you identify relevant research papers, extract key findings, and compare them for your literature review. So that's the first one. We see the second one, AI-powered proofreading and editing. And asking the question we want to ask, can AI support you in refining your arguments and ensuring? And this is it's a question, because by using it, you'll be able to really find out if this tool will really work for you. And I know many persons have begun using it, but it becomes a starting point for them. All right. So Faith and Kathy and
okay, we're going into breakout rooms.
Yes, we can. I think we can. The quicker, the better, because we'll give them more time. I think they have access to the document, and we can have one person reporting. Feel free to use Google to create your prompt. Yeah. Any questions?
We can choose any one of the prompts.
Well, I think what we can do for simplicity, if we put 4 groups, group 1 will be scenario 1, group 2,
Okay,
scenario
good.
2. Otherwise, we'll get ourselves in trouble.
Okay, going now.
So 10 minutes. We're crowdsourcing and we're group thinking. So I think 10 minutes is a lot of time. I think 10 minutes is a lot of time. All right, let's get 10 minutes. You can open up the breakout rooms.
So Binyam joined Faith Ann, so you might have to put him somewhere.
Oh, okay, hold on.
And what we're doing is that we really want to really draw on the questions and scenarios that you've been assigned to. Your group 1, you're doing scenario 1 and context, and you're designing your prompts, and we really want to see how you do that. And I think the key thing here is to allow you to go home and experiment.
Okay, I'm gonna pause the video.
Yes.
Hi, Susan.
So welcome back. Thank you for taking part. Did everyone get to finish? We didn't get to go in the rooms, but certainly did you finish, or did you think that it was something that you could do in 5 minutes or 10 minutes was too much? 10 minutes was too much. Ah, Jim, I love that. It is. I was always thinking that 10 minutes would have been too much, especially given that you guys are super brilliant. So who wants to go? Let's start with group one. What does your prompt looks like? You can read it. You can read it and we all can listen. But we have access to the prompt that you we have access to it. So we can certainly look at it from that standpoint. You have access to it. Group one, if you just want to tell us what you came up with, what does your prompt look like?
We were having a hard time because we weren't as experienced. Josh was using some, I guess, a search that he had done before, and I had just started with the Bing chat. I didn't realize it would give you prompts for questions that you could ask it. I think that was the most exciting thing that I just found, because it gave me the initial summary, but then it started asking me if I wanted to ask it things like, what are some popular academic journals that publish research on sustainable urban development? And I was like, wow, thanks.
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Group two, quickly, because we know we're actually on 8 o'clock now.
Okay, I can read what we came up with. Please review this dissertation document as a 2-year humanity PhD student, checking the grammar and spelling as well as enhancing the clarity and coherence of the writing.
Okay, so what role did you ascribe it to?
What role?
Yeah.
So
I think,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Nancy.
no, go ahead, Jim.
No, so what we did is we actually used it at all the roles, and we asked it specific questions about individual research and how it could both help improve the content, and then we asked it if it could help, how it could help improve the spelling and the grammar, and then we also asked it if it can boost the overall organization of it. And what then we found was we could ask it all three of those things in one statement, and it would do that all within the document.
Wow.
The question that we have, though, is if it's our work and if it's our research and we're just asking it to shape and check it, would we have to cite that as OpenAI 2022 ChatGPT, a large language model? Or would that still be our originally work, just organized differently?
I think, Jim, this is an important question. I think what you stated on earlier is a very good way to disclaim it, because I mean, many of us who use dictionaries, calculators, we use search engines, and it's still our work. We are still in control. But I think when we are mindful of that, I think over time it's going to be something very blurry. And I don't know. I really don't know what. I'd really love to hear what the others think in this realm, because it is a very thin line. It's a very thin line, because it's your work, is that you're using it as a tool. And I think what persons can indicate that, hey, I did use AI in helping me refine the research questions and so forth, and as a particular role in performing that role. And I think what you're doing is excellent, because you are declaring, you're making transparent that you did use this particular tool. I mean, persons may ask, if you use a calculator to calculate this, are you gonna, persons are using computers, and I think one of the things and critical things, Jim, is that persons who are in industry, they are already using AI, and I think I think the regulations around that is important, and I think as individuals, we are guided by our values. Okay, and Kyle is saying, in my little review, I say I use Google Scholar for my search. Fine. I'm okay with that. I don't know. Jim, what do you think?
I cite Dr. Hernandez at her lecture that she gave to our cohort in lead 910, that she said it was okay to use it as a research tool. So I just cite her in that lecture. And then I feel like I'm safe.
That's good. That's cool. That's real
No
cool.
comment.
No comment. That's great. That's great. Yes, I think you're getting a lot of emoticons here. All right, group 3. Is it group 3? Yeah, group 3. Thank you. Group 2. I think you guys did excellent. Excellent. 10 minutes was too much time.
We didn't get anything produced in group 3. We were trying to find where the assignment was and clarifying exactly what the project was and reviewing the material that's been covered already. And I'm afraid that my partners in the group got a lecture from me as a librarian about what I think about AI.
So give us a summary of your discussion you had, which is great.
Well, we were going over exactly what the assignment was, and I was presenting a prompt that was the Global South's perspectives on Hamas's objectives as the beginning of a research topic. And my challenge is as soon as I presented that topic myself, I started thinking of what all my research questions would be. And I don't know what I'd even feed into AI to try to get it to give me something, because my brain is so trained after all the years that I've been a librarian into how to parse a research question and generate subjects out of it and figure out how to put together a research plan. I don't even know what I would do with AI, and I wouldn't trust what it came out with anyhow. So I would suggest that either Binion or Wilford add a little something about what they were thinking, because they're not as biased as I am.
And Wilford, other persons from the group. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Susan. I appreciate that. Really, really appreciate that. Group 4. Group 4.
Yeah, well, I suggested to the group that the prompt could be something like provide recommendations for types of research methodologies to answer a study that seeks to understand yada, 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 whatever it might be.
Okay, good. I know 10 minutes was a lot of time, but did you give it any particular extra context? Any additional context?
Like in our group? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we talked about how deep into the methodology you'd go. Like, would you start at a topic? Would you start at a research question? Would you start at umbrella concept? How would you ask it, and how deep would you follow it? So we were basically, I think the conclusion we came up with, it wasn't mine, I'm not sure who said it, but I agree with it, that it's a reiterative process. But
yes, it is
how the code for these programs is written to begin with.
Can I just add something here? Because I think in this context, one of the useful roles to assign it at Kyle is as an expert research, social science research methodologist. Blah, 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 blah.
And if I were to add as well, Dr. Hernandez, the reason why we need to ascribe roles to the AI, because the information is so vast. And if you don't give it that role context, it might flip the narrative, and you certainly, so giving it the role allows fine tuning of the interactions in the language modules to be more contextual, because it can take the role as a singer. You know, so it's important to give it those context. So that's important. So I like the creative context. What's that again?
Oh,
I thought-
as an expert social science research methodologist, and you could change that to like as a leadership expert, or you know,
Yes.
because a lot of our students are doing leadership. So
Leadership.
and then you just keep tweaking it, right? Yeah.
So it knows that it has to go deep into the leadership theories. It knows that, you know, rather than saying, okay, create a discussion or based on this, it recognize and the whole idea of giving it a level, because you can indicate that you are a first year, second year, it will,
Yes.
and you can ask it to prompt you. And what the researchers are saying, even the persons at Google have tested this, if you put it in pieces and you actually train it, and the more you train it in pieces and rather than giving it one long, it's really that iterative process that allows it to fine tune. So you can actually break your prompt into pieces and ask it to wait for additional prompts, because what will happen is that it forces it to really slow down. In the interest of doing that very quick, sometimes you do get a lot of inaccuracies. So I think doing it in pieces has been one of those things that the computer scientists have been saying in terms of training. There's an article I can send it and I'll post it in the Facebook group that actually confirms this. And you know, so training I mean, let's be clear here, and I want to go back to all what we're doing here is that we are contributing to ChatGPT's performance, or OpenAI with Bard, Google. We are contributing through our active use of it. And so the question you may be wanting to ask is, are we supposed to get some of that profit? It's a commercial entity. Let's be sure they're doing this to make money. And I think we ought to be very clear. And I know that one of the key things we mentioned was ethics, but I also think the whole idea of privacy. Be careful what information, even though you're using it for your everyday office work, and be careful, very, very careful. And I see, Mary, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
So I just thank you. I love this. I love this discussion. Obviously, I served on a panel on it, and we're actually writing right now together, the group of us. But I wonder, for this specific audience, the academic writing audience, how different is the use of ChatGPT from something like the academic phrase bank at Manchester University? Because I don't think I ever said this to Dr. Hernandez, because in the writing circle, when we would sit and write and we could not figure out how to say it better or differently, somebody would open up academic phrase bank so that we weren't just repeating the same, the same phrases over and over in order to cite the studies. And that's, it's a dynamic thing, but it's static. You go and you get the words and then you put them in. So is this like an extension? Do you see it as an extension of helps that are like that have existed kind of from the beginning of time on the internet?
Yeah. And Professor Thompson speaks about writing skeletons. Yeah. Tools. And so I honestly think I've been using AI creatively from that standpoint. And so phrases, and so I'm happy to see that Manchester has that, especially when you want to make the text tight and you're doing your abstract, you really want to really get your so what statements in there to ensure that you have it clear and so forth. So Mary, thank you for that input.
Should not be on this call. Of academic phrase bank.
Yeah, no, and yeah, different, because as I was writing, I went to different groups, I hosted different groups, and somebody almost always had it just at hand. Because then during the check-in, it's like I can't get past whatever it is. I
Yeah.
need a different way to say it. And they
Mhm.
so you would say, oh, here's the link to Academic Phrase Bank. Why don't you have a look there and see if it can help you? Just state it differently because you get tired of seeing your own writing.
Yeah, and saying it the same way, so it's using a thesaurus.
Yes.
So is that a metaphorical thesaurus for academics?
Well, I know we have kept you on overtime, so Dr.
Yes.
Hill, if you would wrap up and then we could talk about because
Yes, well,
questions.
I certainly would wrap up by saying thank you. And I think the task now is, hey, you have an idea of the prompt structure, go ahead and use the tool. AI is ubiquitous, it's all around us, it will be with us, it's not going away, it will be with us for, we're looking towards Industry 5.0. And so having a clear idea of that synergy, if you don't use it, then I know many of us would say we shouldn't, or, and so forth. But I honestly think that if you don't use it, you can't really be the speaker about it. So use it and then you can critique it later. I mean, use it and say, okay, fine, no, it's superficial, it's not doing this and so forth. And it's not that difficult to use. I think in America, you're not constrained like some parts of the world that restrict like using Claude and so forth. You have so many. I mean, I'm using the Bing because the Bing uses the affordances of ChatGPT 4, the technology that they're using. So I'm using that more than the ChatGPT 3 now. I use them all and I'm going to be trying to use Google Bard a little bit more in the future. Again, thank you so much. And if you don't already know, I can put in the chat how you can create an account or how you can begin to create your own account. If you have a Google account, then some of them is just a matter of using your Google account to create an account and test it. You have some prompts there. You can actually modify the prompt and test them in these engines and see how it works and take it from there.
Okay,
So
thank you so very much. I mean,
Yes.
I learned a lot and thank you all for sticking with us. We are out of time, but Dr. Hill has graciously agreed that we're going to post a forum in the dissertation writing circle for Q&A, and he will come back and respond to questions that you may have. In addition, Faith Ann has saved all of the links and everything, and we'll find a way to share those with you afterwards. But on behalf of the Dissertation Writing Circle, Eastern University, and the students, I especially want to thank Faith Ann for putting everything together and encouraging people to come. And of course, Dr. Hill for a brilliant, thought-provoking presentation. Thank you very much. Faith Ann, is there anything else you'd like to say before we go? Okay, have a good evening. Go enjoy your dinner or whatever. Take care. Bye. You saved the chat, right?